Monday, and we do have transcripts that have been coming in hot. But let's make sure that the stream is alive and well before we jump on into things, because I'm sure, like me, many of you have been wondering what the heck has been going on in the Michael Sussman trial. Michael Sussman, of course, the former Hillary Clinton campaign lawyer, indicted for lying to the FBI. We're going to go through it. Trial started this morning. And boy, look at this. We've got the transcripts, baby. Oh, there it is. It's fresh. It is going to be a lot of fun to go through these. This is 135 pages, and this is only the morning session. So look at this. Only the morning session. I got this in my inbox about 35 minutes ago, paid for it, and we're going to get into it. Now, before we do, I want to remind you that we've got the mind map that is available, and I think I can share this now. So let me throw this out and pin this in the chat. Make sure that nobody can get in here and tinker around. But yeah, so we've got the mind map. So I'm going to throw this in the chat, and I will pin that. And so if you want to poke around the mind map yourself, you're free to do that. So I just threw that in the chat. This is what the mind map looks like. And you can browse around on this one. Here you can see, there we go. We got some people popping in. And basically, you can just navigate around this and sort of follow along as I am going through the transcript. We may actually complete sort of a jury question, juror section like this one, for example, where we just go out and fill out some information about the prospective jurors. And so we'll follow along. We'll see how this whole thing goes. But we're experimenting a little bit and having some fun with some of the content we're creating here. Hopefully you enjoy it. But let's go right into the transcript. Remember that it is Monday. We had the jury questionnaire that we filled out yesterday, and today is jury selection. And so they all were piling in to select the jurors. And we know that we've got the different counsel for the government. We've talked about them: DeFilippis, Edgar Algor. He talks a lot today. Keelty and Britain Shaw. Now, I have not looked through this, but I just sort of skimmed through it like this, and you can see we've got some redactions going on here, which means they pulled one of the jurors, sort of aside and said, hey, let's dig into this. And so we got just a lot of testimony from a number of different jurors: prospective juror, courtroom deputy, and so on. Now, it's not going to be really interesting, I think, if I sit here and read this. We wouldn't be able to get through it in the time that we have together. But we are going to see if we can just tease out of this the jurors that are going to be remaining, the jurors that are going to stick around. If they got booted, we'll see if we can identify them, and we'll skip over that section. But as we'll see, this is federal court, and a lot of this happens relatively quickly. So let's see what happens. We've got, for the defendant, they're all appearing. We know these people: Berkowitz and Bosworth. We have Catherine Yao and Hardwick. And then Lisa Moreira is the court reporter. Very, very lovely woman, and was very helpful in getting this document over to us today. So thank you to Lisa. Helped me understand how the whole thing works. Sent it. I paid immediately, and boom, it was right in my inbox. Outstanding. So thank you to Lisa. But anyways, it's bright and early. It's Monday morning. They're in the DC Circuit Court. Judge says, all right, good morning, everybody. Here we are. We've been waiting for this case. It's 2022. But now we're finally for trial. Says, all right, Miss Jenkins is still dealing with the jury, so the court's going to call the case. We're here on the record: United States versus Michael Sussman. This is our first day of voir dire. You want to enter your appearances? Mr. Keelty stands up and says, yeah, hi, Judge. Good morning, Your Honor. My name's Michael Keelty. Britain Shaw's here. Jonathan Algor and Andrew DeFilippis, all for the government. And the judge says, all right, well, good morning, everybody. And Berkowitz, for the defense, Sussman, stands up and says, good morning, Your Honor. We're here as well. And Mr. Sussman is also present in the courtroom. Judge says, good morning, everybody. All right, just a few preliminary matters. Could you folks, says the judge, mic up your bat phone here and press the middle button to make sure they're working? So I told you, this judge is kind of a fun guy. In the courtrooms, they've got the little microphones, and you get on your bat phone and make sure it's working. So everybody pauses. The court says, okay, if there's anything that a potential juror wants to discuss privately, I'm going to let them use these phones. All right. And I've received your joint strikes for cause. So both sides went through, already struck some jurors based on their questions. Says, I filed that on the docket this morning. I haven't seen that yet. He says, I agree with you on that one. Some people given for being stricken for cause, the COVID situation. 4 alternates, he says, probably makes sense. At some point today, I'll have a bowl, and I'll have counsel pick 4 numbers out of the bowl, which will be the alternate seats that no one will know about. except for the court and the counsel. So they're going to use the bowl method. If you remember in the Rittenhouse case, I think they had the bingo thing. Was it the bingo thing that he draws his own number for his alternate or something like that? But here's they're using the bowl methodology. All right, he says, while we're waiting, any developments on the SEPA issues? This is the confidentiality stuff. Al Gore for the government says, yes, Your Honor, I believe we've worked out all the issues. We provided a summary on Friday to address some of your concerns, and we're producing and declassifying some stuff. The court says, all right. There's also a defense motion that is pending. So Sussman's team, they want to limit FBI agent Martin's expert testimony. And we've talked about Agent Martin previously. Agent Martin, if we go over to the mind map, if you're following along on the mind map, Mr. Martin was this guy. He was one of the Durham witnesses who was going to be called out to talk about the DNS records. And DNS, of course, is how they actually got access to some of Trump's information. That's exactly what Rodney Jaffe was using to sort of get an entry point into Trump Tower and the Trump White House. And so Jaffe and the defense doesn't want the FBI to talk about DNS records. So they're communicating about this. Is the government planning on filing an opposition to that? So in other words, the defense wants FBI agent precluded. Government, are you going to oppose that? Ms. Bertain Shaw, prosecutor, says, good morning, Your Honor. I'll be addressing this. The government was not planning to file one, giving the pendency of the testimony. Your trial starting right now, so I'm not going to type something up and send it to you. The court says, all right, then. Well, it's fine. We'll just deal with that later then. Says, all right. Well, having reviewed the questionnaires from all these jurors and gotten the joint strikes out of the way, I suspect this will go pretty quickly. Says, I don't anticipate needing all day. Are we going to get a jury selected? I think you all have a lot more information about each prospective juror than you would have ordinarily through the questionnaires. And we talked about this yesterday. We did a live stream, went through that questionnaire, 30 pages. And many people yesterday, Death was commenting, said, can you refuse to answer these questions? They seem very invasive. And the judge is like, yeah, you were asking about everything. What side of the bed do you sleep on? How do you like your eggs in the morning? It was a lot. Says, I might begin with a few follow-up questions for some of these people, for some of these jurors, but maybe not all of the jurors. And then I'll let you ask follow-ups based on their responses, all right? And you should approach the lectern when you get up. Get up there and come up to the podium. And we'll start with the government and then the defense. Defense Berkowitz says, great, Your Honor. I just want to understand mechanically, typical defense lawyer, what are the rules here? How far away can I get off of that podium? Says, how will it work? I had understood that we might exercise our 10 strikes once the entire jury is pre-qualified, and then we'll have an additional strike for the alternates. But your suggestion of pulling the alternates out of, the judge says, you're right. I'm sorry. Look, we'll pick the alternate seats just so that once we get, 4 alternates, we'll probably need 36 or 37 qualified jurors. We'll get all of the jurors. We'll bring them all into the courtroom, seat them in the box. We'll know which ones are the alternate seats. We'll pick lots to determine those seats beforehand. So they go through some more procedural stuff. It says we'll get 37, 38 qualified jurors. Any problems with that? Okay. Berkowitz says, nope, understood. Got it. Thank you. I thought I almost lost my PDF viewer. Going to have a heart attack. Says, all right, the court says, Ms. Franklin, how are you doing with the jury? Courtroom Deputy Franklin says, I'm well, sir. Court says, well, thanks for helping us out today. Says, I'm helping you out today and also with Miss Whitney. Court says, oh, and one other thing, counsel. We got a call this morning about that juror number 193. He's in slot number 10. She sprained her ankle over the weekend. She's not going to be able to join us, so I'm going to strike her. We'll skip over her, all right? All right. In addition, juror number 130, her father became gravely ill over the weekend. She's got to leave town, so the court's going to strike her for cause. All right. So this whole thing continues. The court says, all right, in addition to the full witness list, which each juror will have reviewed, we'll ask if they recognize or know anyone. We'll have 2 pseudonym names at the witness table for them to view. I'll also ask, he says, be a little sensitive about exposing the name. We're going to try to keep the privacy protected of all these people. So they bring in the first juror. Courtroom deputy walks them in. Your Honor, here we have juror 1113. Court says, good morning, ma'am. She says, good morning. How are you today? Says the judge. Well, I'm well, thank you. Did you have a nice weekend? Yeah. Thank you for your service here today. I've got a questionnaire in front of you. I understand you work at the Library of Congress. Remember that? And we talked about this. They had to, yesterday on the questionnaire, identify what their job professions were. How long you been doing that? About 20 years. You enjoy that? Yes, I do. Have you ever heard about this case that I described? No recollection of it? Never heard of it? She says, no. Don't know anybody involved? Nope. When you were in that big ceremonial courtroom and you learned that you might be on this jury, what'd you think about it? Well, she says, I count it as an honor and a privilege to do my service. Court says, all right. It says you get your news from where? Facebook and Instagram, any other place? Well, maybe on the TV. Judge says, that's good enough for me. Counsel, anything for you? Prosecutor, government says, oh, we've got no questions. All right. Berkowitz, the defense jumps up. Yeah, we've got questions, just a couple, briefly. Oh, good morning, ma'am. How are you doing? Good morning. You say you served in a jury 4 times before, approximately. 4 times, my goodness. You remember anything about those cases? Were they criminal or civil cases? She says, it's been so long time. He says, all right, well, that's all I got. Prospective juror, you're on the panel. Is how it goes. That's it. So we don't get actually much. Any challenge to juror 113? No, Your Honor. All right, 113 is qualified. All right. 857 has been stricken. We'll move over to 528. So our first juror is on there, and we don't know too much about her other than she gets her news from Facebook and Instagram, says she doesn't have much that is out there that she has seen about the case at all. All right. So we have prospective juror number 1. Number 0528 comes in, says, all right, good morning. You can take your mask off if you want. He says, thank you. All right. So the first thing I have to ask about this is childcare issues. Any problems? Well, a little bit earlier, my wife's out of town and we have some issues, but otherwise, no big deal. Court says, all right, well, we're going to try to get out of here by 5 o'clock. Does that work for you? If for some reason you couldn't get out exactly that time, could they arrange? He says, well, I'd have to actually speak. It's actually 2 schools. So I've got some issues with childcare, but they move on. He says that you're involved in Department of Labor and Human Rights and Amazon. He worked there. He was somebody who worked at the Responsible Business Alliance from 2002 to 2006. If you were selected today, you would hear testimony about the campaign. Do you think that would affect your ability, that your support for the campaign would affect your ability to work and be fair? So let's see. He says, you contributed. Oh, we missed this. We almost skipped over this. Oh, here it is. We have a contributor to Hillary Clinton. Oh, I almost skipped over this one. Got to be careful. Sometimes I'm going to get a little carried away on this. You contributed to Hillary, didn't you? He says, yes, I did. And you will, if you were selected, you would hear testimony about the campaign, right? Do you think that would affect your ability to be fair? Please be honest and upfront. Says, obviously with these issues, there is an interest. I would obviously strive for impartiality as best as I can. Says, your father's a retired attorney. Yeah. What kind of law? Real estate. Not criminal? No, I don't think so. All right. You answered 87, said, if you're selected as a juror, you would be concerned about the reactions to your verdict. Would you be concerned? And you said that you might have some concerns in that regard. He says, well, look, it's a high profile case. Obviously, I have a big concern. It's a new responsibility. I've got a new job at a new company. I would be very cautious to not appear in any public discussion. And you're not using your name here, right? So no, I'm not using my name. We don't release the names of jurors, but there is a chance, that somebody might see you out there. That could be negative. You have a problem with that? He says, well, I would be more concerned, I guess, my employer. It's a new position. Court says, all right, over to you, attorneys. Government prosecutor jumps up, says, all right, you mentioned that you've read some reporting about this case, right? Yeah, I have. And you formed some opinions. Well, I can't say that I've formed any opinions. I wouldn't go that far, but I have heard of the case. I'm fairly well read and fairly up to date on politics. Says, all right, and you're completely confident that you can be fair and impartial. You donated money to Hillary Clinton. Prosecutor is really dialing in. Says, well, I think I could be fair and impartial. We can't judge or prejudge what may be made up in your mind at any one point. So prosecutor says, all right, I guess that's it for me. The defense is like doing cartwheels and says, nothing on behalf of the defense. We don't have any questions. We'd actually love this person on the jury. That'd be great. Court says, all right, let me just follow up. Says, so this case, has political overtones, all right? We're talking about the DNC hacking Trump and all of that. You've heard about the case. You know what those overtones are. But Hillary Clinton is not on trial here. Donald Trump is not on trial here. The judge wants to make sure that he's very clear. Sussman is on trial, and he deserves a fair trial. The government deserves a fair opportunity. And I will instruct you, as I did the other day, that you can't read anything about this. So honestly, sir, How confident are you that you could follow the instruction and give him a fair trial? Says, I think I'd be confident that I could give Sussman a fair trial and follow that instruction, which are the magic words. That's what you're supposed to say when you get that question. I can be fair and follow the instruction. Boom. Anything else, counsel? Berkowitz? Nope. Thank you for your service. Prospective juror, the court says, any challenge to 528? Prosecutors are like, yeah, of course we are. That guy literally donated to Hillary. Yes, Your Honor, it almost seemed like you talked him into being fair and impartial. He initially said he wasn't sure if he could be fair. I think he did also say in the questionnaire that he has I asked him whether he had if he's read articles about this case or formed opinions. And I can double check, but yeah, he says he's got strong opinions about the 2016 election. So given the fact that he's donated to both the DNC and Hillary for America, we just have concerns about his impartiality. So yeah, we want to strike this guy for a cause, all right, because he donated to DNC and Hillary. Over to you, defense. What do you think about this character? Berkowitz is up there. He's like, well, Judge, come on. Judge, I didn't hear anything in his initial remarks that would suggest he could not be fair and impartial. He answered the questions unequivocally, including 77, 78, saying, yeah, I can be fair and impartial. You specifically asked him. He said, I'm very confident, and I'm confident that I can be fair and impartial. So I don't think there's any issues at all. And so what does the judge say? Judge Cooper, the court will deny the government's challenge to 528. I agree, says the judge. He expressed a fairly high degree of confidence in his ability, so 528 is qualified. Also, the government can use the peremptory if it chooses, and they didn't use it, it looks like. Courtroom deputy brings in 178. All right, so we've got two jurors now who are on the panel. So let's just go and take some quick notes on them while we have it fresh in our minds. Number 2 is a male, and he was a DNC and Hillary for America donor. And that's about what we know from him. By the way, if you want to follow along in the mind map, it is pinned up in the chat. But number 1 was a female. And remember, she got her news from Instagram and Facebook. Instagram, Facebook news. Number 2, he also had daycare issues, but both of them are going to be qualified and on the panel. So let's go back to this order. Another juror, 178, comes in. How are you? Hope you had a nice weekend. Yeah, I'm well. Good to be here. How long have you lived in Washington, sir? 12 years. You've not heard anything about this case? You never heard of Mr. Sussman? Is that right? That's right. No opinions at all. No, sir. All right. Well, look, there's a manila folder right there in front of you. Have you looked at the names this morning? You recognize any of these people? Nope, don't recognize them. Okay, judge asks. And you were involved in another trial, right? It was a robbery trial. How long? 7 years ago. Any opinions about the criminal justice system? No, not really. All right, it says, there's a black phone there in the middle. Can you press that button? And if cleared, counsel can join. This is a closed conference. They're having conversation, and I don't know what the heck they're saying. Court reporter Lisa is just jotting it down, but it's closed. We don't get to see it. The closed conference opens back up, and the judge turns it over to the prosecutors and says, any follow-up, Durham? Keelty says, yes, Your Honor. Good morning, sir, and thank you for your service. You mentioned in the questionnaire that you work in the cybersecurity field. You've got some cybersecurity experience. Can you tell me more about that? Yeah, I actually worked at the Department of Energy at the time. Cybersecurity analysis, also worked for DOD, DISA, the Defense Information Systems. I was a portfolio manager for NSA and DISA. Whoa! I did that kind of stuff, finance side of the house. Wow, all right. And remember, yesterday when we were going through the jury questionnaire, there was a whole section on that. And we were speculating. We're saying this case is right in the middle of Washington, D.C. How can there not be hundreds of people who are all a part of this, right? Who are all in one of these agencies. So you're going to see a lot of this, I think, in the jury pool. Keelty says, this case is going to involve some cybersecurity issues. Would you be able to independently evaluate evidence? Like, could you just set all of your expertise aside? He doesn't really understand the question. Would you be able to just set it aside? He says, yeah, I can absolutely do that. Berkowitz, the defense, chimes in, says, okay, we're going to follow up on something that they asked about. Given your knowledge, if the evidence that were presented at trial, would you be willing to accept that some of this that came into court, came in on its own and not bring your specialized knowledge into it? And he says yes. 178 looks like qualified. No challenges on that one either. We get to juror 162. 178 was sort of an IT person. 1162 comes in. Judge says, good morning. How are you? How was your weekend? Same types of conversations. I have a store in Washington, D.C. It's an ice cream shop. That sounds nice. How's business? Yeah, it's up and down. Looking forward to the summer though, right? Because it's going to get hot and people are going to need more ice cream. And you've been a security guard in the past, right? And you've heard nothing about this case? Nope, not to my knowledge. And what did you think when we talked to you about this case? Didn't think too much about it. I'd be happy to serve on the jury. Says, are you excited or not excited? She says, well, I'm not excited at all. Not excited. Why is that? Well, I don't like to play judge and jury with people's lives. The judge says, well, that's an interesting take. Do you have any religious or ethical or moral problems judging somebody else? She says, well, I mean, if I don't have to do it, then I wouldn't do it. That's just me. I don't believe in judging people. Court says, well, that's nice. If you're on this jury, you would have to judge somebody one way or another. So would you be uncomfortable doing that? She says, yes, I would. That's actually a male. Says, okay, well, all right, sir. Thank you very much. Court strikes 1162 for cause. Doesn't want to sit in judgment. So now we had the other prior juror, number 3. Before we get ahead of ourselves, 178 is qualified. He's an IT person, so let's throw him on the map. IT professional who was qualified. And we go back. We know, whoops. Get this back over here. We know that the other juror is going to get booted because does not want to sit in judgment. Let's see who they bring in next. Juror number 170. Take your mask off if you'd like. Oh, we have a lawyer. You're a tax lawyer here. And you work at the IRS. What's your role? Generally, disputes, not disputes. He says, so it's research and writing. And you were in an accounting firm? Yeah. During law school, do you ever practice criminal law? No, I clerked at law school, but it was the tax court. Any questions from the government? No questions. Berkowitz, the defense, comes in. Says, I want to ask you a couple questions. You said your father-in-law is a former prosecutor, so you've kind of got some prosecutorial bend in your family. Where did he work? Well, he was over there in Southern Maryland. Now he's a state court judge. Anything that would bias you because your father's a former prosecutor? Think you could be fair? He says, yeah, I could be fair. And you also have a low-level security clearance, right? What'd you have to do to get that? I'd fill out a long questionnaire. All right, you can step down. And it looks like counsel, now they're asked to review the other names before they come in. We get another juror, 775. So I don't see here whether they qualified him or not, but it's looking like maybe they did. So maybe we'll have to sort of summarize all this at the end, but sounds like he was qualified. I don't see anything in here that says he's not qualified, so I think they sat him. We go on to the next one, 775. He is over from program management at the DC Department of Health. These are all government people. Oh my gosh. All right, this is great. So perfect. Prospective juror says 5 years working at the Department of Health and Human Services. Did you get involved with SNAP benefits and things like that? Yeah, public assistance benefits. How heavy is the backlog? Very high. My mother worked at the DOJ for 20 years. Oh, look at this. Prospective juror. Court, I had a big case involving that. It says, juror, your mother worked for the DOJ for 20 years. Is that right? Juror says, yeah, specifically the FBI. What did she do for the FBI? She was an analyst. And of course, we know that the FBI is all over this case. There will be witnesses in this case from the FBI, a lot of evidence about the FBI. FBI is alleged to have been the victim in this case. Would your relationship with your mother and her relationship to the FBI affect your ability to assess this case? No. Do you and her ever talk about it? She says, no, not really, unless it's a documentary on TV. All right. And you had not heard about this case before, right? She says, no, never heard of it. Any issues being on this jury? No. Prosecutor stands up. Says, okay, thank you for your service, which is, nice. You mentioned one of the questions that you filled out. In the 2016 election, you said you worked in it, doing voter drives or phone banks. She says, yes. Are you comfortable in open court saying who the candidate was for? Who did you phone bank for in 2016? She says, sure. Guilty says, okay, well, tell us. Who was it? Joe Biden, she says. Joe Biden. Oh, no. Okay, that's all I have, Your Honor. She's another Democrat. Berkowitz, the defense, stands up. Good morning, sir. How are you doing? Good morning. I represent Mr. Sussman. Just want to ask you a couple questions. Make sure you could be fair to him. Can you tell us more about what you do for a living? Yeah, I'm the DC Department of Human Services. I'm a deputy administrator. I do IT approval stuff. And I think that I noted on your questionnaire, this is one of the fun questions. Remember on the questionnaire video we did yesterday that they were talking about open-ended questions. What's your opinion about a prosecutor? What's your opinion about a judge? What's your opinion about lawyers? This guy wrote that you think there are too many lawyers in DC, which I'm sure is true. I mean, think about the concentration of lawyers in DC. Horrendous. Prosecutor says yes. Defense says, I don't know that there are a lot of people that would disagree with you on that. But do you think that you could be fair to Mr. Sussman, who is one of those lawyers that you kind of don't want? He says, yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, I worked for a law firm previously, so I'm sympathetic to the cause, man. Like I hate lawyers, but I mean, I kind of understand them. Which law firm did you work with? A federal practice group. And have you ever have any concerns that Sussman worked at a large law firm? Like you hate lawyers. You also hate big law firms because he worked at Perkins Coie. And you think that you could set aside all of that and be fair? He says, sure thing. And he also chimes in. He says, I guess I should say that 2016, it would have been Hillary Clinton, not Joe Biden, right? Because Joe Biden ran in 2020, not 2016. So we have another Hillary phone banker and donor. Court says, I'm sorry, sir. Prospective juror says, I said it wrong. In 2016, it would have been Hillary, not Joe. That was 2020. Did you get that, counsel? Prosecutor says, yeah. Did you say that in 2016, it would have been Hillary Clinton that you were phone banking for? Yes, Hillary Clinton. Prosecutor's like, oh, yeah. In this trial, you hear a lot about Hillary Clinton. Would your support for Miss Clinton allow you to be fair and impartial? He said, well, I hope so. Yes, I do. You would hope so, or you're confident you can be fair and impartial? I'm confident. Okay. Any challenge to 775? The prosecutors say no. Oh my gosh. No, Your Honor. Berkowitz, nope. Okay, he's qualified, so we got to log that one. 775 is a qualified juror, so we'll put him on the panel. Now, he may be number 4 or number 5, actually. I think he's number 5, but he's a Hillary phone banker, we'll call this guy. Hillary phone banker. 2016 election. And he works at the Department of Health and Human Services, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no. What did I just do? There it is. Okay, so Health and Human Services. And we're now seeing what this is looking like. So an IT professional, we've got a couple Democrats, DNC, HFA donor. There was a number 4 who I think they set or qualify, but we just don't know yet. And I can't type today. There it is. All right, so let's go back to the transcripts now. And we have some thoughts on this. Your Honor, we're going to recall juror number 775. So they bring this guy back. Welcome back. I understand the trial date is supposed to go to the 27th. I have an international vacation on the 29th, so I just wanted to state that on the record. Memorial Day weekend. Where are you going? Barcelona. Then he says, okay, counsel, we may go beyond that, so I would propose striking him based on hardship. Any objection to that? So one of our jurors is now gone. So that was 779. So we'll have to go back and figure out who that was, but well, let's just do that now. So this was page 33. See if we can do a control F on this. Nope, don't see that. All right, so we'll just have to figure that out later. Not going to do it while we're going through this right now. But they bring in another juror. 1162. Take your mask off. Do you have a good weekend? Already read all that. Let's go back down here. That's why we got to stay focused. My fault. Can't skip up. Here we are. Berkowitz says, Your Honor, I'm sympathetic to people's travel schedules. Having said that, we've got a lot of jurors and the issues. So with respect, we would be open to dismissing him based on a vacation that's scheduled over 2 weeks out. All right. They're going to strike 775 for cause. They bring in juror number 175. How are you? Feel free to remove your mask if you'd like. You're retired, is that right? Yes, sir. You're far too young to be retired, says the court. Oh, and you also worked at the Department of Defense before that. Tell us about that. I did a lot of things, mostly admin stuff, timekeeping. Did you work in a particular field? I work for the Corps of Engineers, some place called Omniplex. If you got on this trial, it's not going to be anything like Judge Judy. You know, you like Judge Judy, he put that on his form. It's not going to be anything like that. Also says you experienced a shooting. Is that right? I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, it's about in the 80s. Anything about the incident, about your shooting that would preclude you from being open and fair in this case? Juror says, well, the only thing I didn't like was the plea bargain that they gave. The police officer actually came back to court, but says, no, that wouldn't affect me. Berkowitz takes the stand, jumps up to the podium, says, I represent Sussman. Could you put aside any views you have about the federal government and evaluate Sussman solely based on the evidence? He says, yes. Any challenge? Nope. So 175 is also qualified. You can see how quickly this is going, and we're actually not getting that much interesting details out of a lot of this, other than the people who are just essentially Democrats, right? Almost every single person in here has been somebody who works for the government. The one guy owns an ice cream store, but everybody else works for the government. And 2 out of the 5 that we've talked about so far are bona fide Democrats who phone banked and donated to Hillary. Perfect. So they bring in another juror. You can take your mask off if you'd like. What is cocktail strategy? Says the judge. Says, I do a lot of training and education and kind of marketing around 2 wines, direct, and I sell them. Okay, and you were a bartender before? And you watch Dollop. What is that? He says it's a podcast. It looks like different American history figures. Don't know that any of that's going to impact the case. Also says that you donated to some candidates in 2016. Who would that be? Would you be comfortable telling the courtroom? He says, yes. I made a couple of donations to the Democratic National Party. You know, $25, $50, whatever. It's Democrats all over the place. Oh, man. And then I donated to, I want to say it was to AOC and Hillary. I don't remember. This is not good. Keelty says, okay, well, that's good enough. Juror says, yes. Keelty says, this trial is going to involve people like Hillary. You know, you still think you can be fair and impartial? Juror says, I'd like to believe not. Oh, maybe he's being honest here. Keelty says, okay. Juror says, well, it's hard to say without. Prosecutor senses blood in the water. Do you have any strong opinions about the 2016 election? He says, I believe it was certified. Okay. 2016. Is he talking about 2020? Everybody's getting confused about the dates. Keelty says, okay, what about the opposing candidate, Donald Trump? Any strong feelings towards Trump? He says, yeah, as far as especially with 2020, I do. So Keelty says, all right, let's be clear. Are you 100% certain that you can be completely fair and impartial, or is there some doubt in your mind? Juror says, well, you know, actually, there is a little doubt in my mind because, you know, it's hard to totally remove any feelings you have. Prosecutor says, perfect. So the prosecutor is knowing that this guy's going to get struck, very likely. So Berkowitz, the defense, is going to do everything they possibly can to get this guy to reverse his opinion. And these are always fun because this guy is just like, I can't be honest, and watch him by the end of this. Good morning. How are you? I represent Michael Sussman. A couple questions. Want to make sure you're fair and impartial. You understand this case involves an allegation that Sussman allegedly lied to the FBI? Okay. And it doesn't involve any political candidates as parties to this case, right? No Trump, no Hillary, nobody's involved. Nobody's running for office here, sir. So we can set this aside, right? And Ms. Clinton is not on trial and accused of wrongdoing. Mr. Trump is not on trial accused of wrongdoing. And prosecutor's like, oh, I get it. I get where you're going with this. Knowing that, and knowing that this is about an individual and the facts will be presented in this courtroom and the judge would instruct you to listen to the facts as they come from the witnesses and to be impartial and not let these preconceived notions dictate anything. Do you have confidence that you could in fact be fair and impartial? Do you, in fact, think that you could decide the case based solely on the evidence in the courtroom and not any preconceived views that you might have? Good work there, defense attorney. Big, nice paragraph. Juror, can you do that, sir? Yes or no? He says, yes, period. It's his big debut, baby. He's excited. He's like, oh, I get it. Yes, I can be fair and impartial, sir. Thank you for walking me through that. Berkowitz, and these two guys are like buddies now. Berkowitz says, confident? Question mark? Juror says, yes. Knowing that, yes, I can. Berkowitz says, thank you. Judge, back over to you. So the judge says, all right, well, thank you, ma'am. It's a female. Juror says, thank you. And they did tell us to mention that I have a work trip planned for this coming Monday, a week from today, just from the day. Okay, what kind of work trip is that, says the judge. It's like an educational training or something. Can anybody stand in for you? Well, I'm the only person with that job. That makes it hard. Training's in Delaware at 5 p.m. Could you reschedule it? Case is supposed to last 2 weeks. Could you put it off for a week? Yeah. Yes, if I had to. Okay. Counsel, this is unbelievable. What is this? Okay, look, the prosecutor, Mr. Keelty, no challenge from the government. They're not going to challenge that. No challenge from the government. After all of that. All right. Not even going to make an argument? She just said like 3 times that she couldn't be fair until the defense attorney rehabilitated her. So she's qualified. 757 is qualified. Just amazing. So they bring in number 390. And we had a super chat come in from Zulu. Thank you for that, Zulu. Zulu's helping support the cost of the transcripts. Every single page on this transcript, just by the way, is $1.20. So I appreciate your support, however you want to support the obtaining of the transcripts. But they're $1.20 a page, and this one's about 135 pages, and we're going to get an afternoon transcript as well. So thank you, Zulu, for that. But I want to also address your question. It says, I agree, Rob. People who vote Democrat should be disqualified from juries. Zulu, that's not what I said. Hello. But we are not talking about a standard trial. This is a trial involving Democrats. So maybe you could find some other people who didn't actually donate to Hillary Clinton when they're sitting on a case that involves Hillary Clinton. That's all. Otherwise, I'm sure there's many other Democrats, but not the people who donate to the DNC would ideally, because let's just reverse this. Okay. Let's just flip this. What if Donald Trump is on trial and you get a bunch of MAGA people who are all donating to Donald Trump? Zulu, would you be okay with putting them on the jury? I doubt it. I mean, you'd have to say, okay, like what if a guy walks into court with a MAGA hat on and you just say, yeah, put him on the jury because Republicans should be on the jury. I think that we can create a little bit more of a difference there, but I understand your support, Zulu, and Zulu's always needling me. I love it. He is very supportive. Thanks for that, Zulu. And it's a good question, but yeah, Democrats is all I can say about it. The court says, how are you? You can feel free to take your mask off. It says you work in IT. What type of IT? Or your husband? Husband does stuff. He works at a deaf phone company for people. Does he do any political groups? Any political work? Well, they had a contract with the state of Maryland. And you're a speech language pathologist. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. And I work at a place called the DMV Beneficiaries. Beneficial Insects. Says your partner was involved in a criminal trial. Berkowitz takes the podium, says, I represent Sussman. I note that you're following this Hollywood trial that you can't say. Would you be willing to listen and pay attention to this case if it weren't as exciting as that one? I know, everybody's paying attention. Everybody's paying attention to that trial, which is, I'm not throwing shade on that trial. It's just like, this is also a pretty important trial. And this lady, this juror is also, she's probably over there watching all the law tubers who are all covering the Amber Heard trial. She says, yeah, I can pay attention to this one. Fortunately, says this one's a little bit, that one is a little bit too much for me. Understood. So she's right. It is too much. All right. So nothing further. Thank you very much. You can step down. Any challenge? No, she's qualified. She gets on there. They bring in another juror, 426. Sir, take your mask off if you'd like. You work for the Bureau of Prisons. What do you do for them? Well, I work at M&R preparation. We work on 121 different facilities. Some of these cases might involve a conviction. Given your involvement at the Bureau of Prisons, is your involvement in a criminal case going to be problematic? He says no. Good morning from the defense. I noted in your questionnaire, you said that the criminal justice system could be improved. Could you elaborate on that? And he says, well, I think everything can be improved. A lot of different things that we can do. And you work for the Bureau of Prisons. Could you still be fair to Sussman? And he says, yes. Any challenge? No, he's qualified as well. They bring in another one, 418. All right, come on in, have a seat. How was your weekend? It was fine. Speaking to the mic there. Sorry about that. That's all right. A little humor for the courtroom. It's complicated. They're trying to figure out the microphone. You used to work for the Air and Space Museum, right? That's the Smithsonian right around the corner there in the congressional sort of whatever that square is. Yeah, I did. What'd you do there? Well, I was an intern public coordinator. Have you ever heard anything about this case? No, nothing. I'm willing to serve. Any questions? Keelty says, well, in your article, it said that in your questionnaire, it said that you've read articles about, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, but one of the people who may factor into this trial is an individual by the name of Jim Baker. Does that ring a bell to you? And prospective juror says, well, if that's the person that was, I think, in the Bush administration, he says, no, I think it's a different one. Says, okay, well, then we're not talking about the same person. I also noted that you mentioned you donated to various political campaigns over the years. Is that true? And would you have any issues setting aside your political beliefs to be fair? Prospective juror says, I can't. All right. And we didn't get the question about who you voted for or who you donated to. Berkowitz gets up and says, can you give Sussman a fair trial? Yes. So 418 is qualified. 426 comes in the room now. Says, I've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow. And if we could be sequestered, then that's going to be a problem. I've got a mother with mother-in-law issues. So the court starts hashing through these things. Follow-up appointment, 9 a.m., 45 minutes. Says he could probably reschedule. I have an elderly mother. You will not be sequestered. 15-minute breaks in the morning. No other issues. And looks like he's going to be qualified. Then we bring in 1023. Prospective juror here. He does digital health policy. Been doing that for about 10 years. And none of this working. This person, close friend, works at the U.S. Attorney's Office and would not be biased. Thanks for your service today. This is going very quickly. It's kind of surprising. So somebody else here is now, I work in digital health fields. Let's see if we can see anything good. A lot of this looks pretty much just kind of like nuts and bolts. I represent Sussman. He's a national security and privacy lawyer. Have you ever heard of Sussman? No. And the fact that he works in that space, is that going to cause any prejudice? No. So that juror's, she's qualified. So this is going pretty quickly. We have another person who's a Spanish teacher. School is over in DC. Any reason you can't serve? Nope, doesn't look like that. Nothing from the government, nothing from the defense. All right, you're free to step down. Any objection? No, 225 is qualified. So, look at this. I mean, there's almost very little questions. They filled out the form. They looked at the form. They decided what they liked. Another one comes in, take your mask off. Any challenges? No and no. 2 more no's. I retired 2 years ago. I was at the Department of Mental Resources. And you were a law clerk in Louisiana, is that right? Yes, sir. And so if we excluded lawyers from juries in DC, we would never be able to pick a jury. But one of the dangers of having, or one of the risks of having lawyers on a jury is that sometimes they might dominate the discussion and prevent a free flow of ideas. Would that be an issue for you? No, I don't think so. Berkowitz has a couple questions. Thank you for your service. I want to follow up. You're a lawyer, perhaps dominating the discussion. There's going to be testimony in this case about clients and billing records and specialized knowledge and all that stuff. What happens if something is inconsistent with what your practice was? What happens if you did something differently than many of these other lawyers? Can you still be fair and impartial? Yeah, I think I can. I can sort of do what other people say they did. You've got connections with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Says, yeah, I was in the Eastern District for some time. That was in New Orleans. Can you set it all aside? Looks like, yeah, he can. 942 is also qualified. Another juror's brought in. Does insurance policy. You know, I'm not sure how much we're going to glean out of this. This trial is going to involve testimony, law firm, Perkins Coie. Prospective juror says no problems. And you answered that question with an asterisk. Is there anything about the experience that would make you hesitant to serve on a jury? Prospective juror says yes. Well, I can't see what you said, but what'd you say? She says, I guess I would say that I found it to be very difficult. More difficult experience than I even expected coming from the other side of things. I think it's difficult to sit in judgment of another person. That's just my experience. And it didn't stop me. But I did find it to be a difficult process. And would you continue to do it here? I would fulfill my obligation the best I could. Counsel, any follow-up? No difficulties on reaching a verdict. Could still be fair and impartial. But do you have any incredibly strong feelings about either candidate from 2016? In the 2016 election, she says, yes. We're going to hear both names. She says, yes, I would certainly say that I have strong feelings about candidates in the election. All right. And the candidates are not on trial here, right? She says, sure. Just Mr. Sussman, but you'll hear their names. So I'm just trying to, and she says, sure. I mean, I don't think that it would preclude me from filling, my obligations, but prosecutor says, can you for 100% certainty be certain, or do you have a little bit of doubt? She says, no, I'm 100% certain. So the defense jumps back up saying, he was a big law lawyer. Any problems with that? She says, with the caveat that I won't have to be public, no problems. It says, can I make a statement, which is two things? So this juror is interesting. She says before they have her step down, prospective juror says, two things I got to tell you guys. One, I did want to just, again, in the interest of full disclosure, I was scrolling through the Washington Post today, and I did see a reference to the headlines. I scrolled really quickly past it, but I didn't read anything. I just want to let you know. Very, very rule follower. Also, I think that there was a question about whether a 2-week trial would be a hardship. And I suspect this may be the case for a number of people, but I want to point out it didn't have a specific deadline. And given my current workload, I'm going to have difficulties. Judge says, all right, look, there's no set limit on the timeline. Can you continue to do this? Says, I would try my very best. There's no reason why I wouldn't try my best. Any challenges? No. And she's qualified. So the rest of this is looking much the same, to be honest. We're seeing a lot of the same questions. They're not really diving in too hard. I mean, even some of the questions that I was expecting them to dive in on were coming from, well, Durham, and the prosecutors just didn't do it, which is kind of surprising. Let me take a look at the chat and see what's going on over here. I see Zulu's here, Lean's here, Vijaya's in the house, Nigel Word. I can hear Hillary laughing from here. I have not watched the 2000 Mules yet, but I'm looking forward to digging into that at some point. But I guess we'll just keep plugging through this thing. Let me check my email and see if we have the afternoon transcripts, because maybe we can see how this thing closes out. But if it's a lot of the same, it's basically I'm sort of repeating myself a lot. And it feels a little bit like it might be dragging on. But nope, I don't have the afternoon transcripts yet. So we'll just keep going through this. We'll try to pick this up a little bit and see if we get any clarity on what the final verdicts are, or the final sort of makeup is, because in the afternoon transcript, we would be able to see if they finished, but they don't finish this morning. So let's remember that we go back to page 75. We'll scroll all the way down to the bottom and just see what we've got. So Lisa closed this out. Yeah, they go to lunch right after that, and they return back after the lunch recess. So there's no clarity on sort of how far along we are in the process. So we go back to 75. And let's see who else we've got. They bring in somebody who says that they've got familiarity with the DNS data. And remember, the DNS data was, well, very important to Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS was interfacing with Rodney Jaffe, who had a contract with Georgia Tech University to go and basically hack all of these different facilities. Trump White House, Trump Tower, many people were involved in that. So now this guy has familiarity with the DNS stuff. What are you aware of with that? He says, well, you know, I talk about it in my job. And if there's an expert who comes in, like that FBI agent, David Martin, if he comes in, would you put aside that knowledge? Like I said before, I think I could, but it's hard to do that. Do you recognize any other names from the witness list? He says, yes, I do. Mark Elias, David Martin. Mark Elias, we know Mark Elias is this person who was Hillary Clinton's main campaign lawyer. He's seen here, same guy who formed Democracy Docket. He was very successful against Donald Trump's litigation back in the 2016 election and was very involved in the DNC. Perkins Coie was basically a general partner over there and was working with Michael Sussman hand in hand. So the person who is now a prospective juror recognizes that name and also recognizes David Martin. David Martin is the FBI agent. Prospective juror says, so I doubt it's the same one, but it's the father of a woman who I went to high school with. All right. And Mr. Martin, another student. Okay. So we do have a challenge here. Government does not challenge him, but the defense does. Says, Your Honor, Mr. Sussman is going to challenge this juror on the issue that he's got technical knowledge with respect to the key issues. And while he said he would like to think that he would try, he said that he really couldn't guarantee in both. I tried to ask him an open-ended question about that. He said he would struggle with it. And it sometimes can be hard to separate one's expertise from another. And so we would challenge him. Court says, no, denying that challenge. We're not getting into the accuracy of the data anyways. We're not talking about all those DNS records. Remember, a lot of that was precluded because the judge didn't want to get into the weeds on all of it. Says, as you know, it's just about an overview of the data. And so he's someone who seems pretty conscientious about it. So I'm going to overrule your challenge, and he is qualified. They take a short break, 10 to 15 minutes. They come back. We're going to aim for 38, he says. And by my count, we're at 15. So just getting close to about halfway there. That's correct. We're getting there, making good progress. Your Honor, calling juror 715. Good morning, ma'am. Thanks for being here. Where do you work? It's called 7-Letter. What is that? It's a PR firm. Oh, that's interesting. Because remember that one of the main critiques here was that Fusion GPS was doing PR work. Fusion GPS allegedly was, or pretty, I think clearly, was actually emailing back and forth with reporters saying, take this story and run with it, the Russian Trump collusion story, and dump the Hillary Clinton WikiLeaks email story. So now they've got a PR person here who can distinguish between those two activities. What sort of PR? Commercial, governmental, politics? Says commercial mostly, some government work. All right. If everyone could turn their electronics off, I'd appreciate it. There was an interruption in the courtroom. Oh, no. Juror says, I do operations. I don't work with clients. And you were in hospitality before that? Yeah, commercial real estate too. And you never heard about this case? Nope. Any impressions about it? No, sir. Any follow-up? Maybe. Defense stands up, says, it's still morning, I think. I'm Sean. I represent the defendant. I think you noted that you might know somebody in the FBI. Who might that be? Says, well, I know a person of mine. I've stayed in touch with them. They live in the area. And the defense says, well, I've got to make sure you're fair. I can't assume that your friend at the FBI can't turn into something, serious. Says, would this impact you? I could be fair and impartial. Thank you. 715's qualified. Next juror comes up. You're a teacher by training? Yeah, kindergarten. I did gymnastics for about 8 years, and I worked at an early education center. And you're a former gymnast? Yeah, former. I like the floor routine. And what was your first thoughts about this case? No thoughts. I mean, I figured it'd be a pretty boring case, honestly. The court says, I'm sorry. She says, Judge, I said I figured it would be a pretty boring case, honestly. Judge says, yeah, I heard you that time. Would you have any problems serving on this jury? She says, no. All right, anything? Berkowitz, the defense, stands up, says, other than having to sit through a boring case, if we can't do anything about it, If it's boring, can you still be fair and impartial? She says, yeah, no problem. She's qualified. They bring out another person. You can take your mask off if you want. You work at the Bureau of Fiscal Service? Yeah, it's the Bureau of Treasury. Basically, it's like an accounting firm. So you're an important guy when there's a shutdown. Is that right? Says, well, I still go to work. That's right. And you're not heard about this case before. Nope, haven't heard about it. Any impressions about appearing on this jury? Nope. Not one way or the other? Nope. All right. Prosecutor stands up. Just very quickly, sir. In the questionnaire you filled out, you mentioned that you had donated in 2016 to a presidential campaign. Is that right? He says, yeah, in the primaries. Do you mind saying in open court who you donated to? Well, it would have been on the Democratic side, probably a couple of campaigns. Okay, well, that's fine. Let me ask you, you might hear names during the course of this trial, the names of both candidates in 2016. Says neither one of them is on trial. The defendant is on trial. But do you have any strong feelings about any candidate? Or that might impact your ability to be fair and impartial? No, I don't believe so. You also mentioned you had some issues with the strengths of our nation's privacy laws. What's your problem with that? Can you elaborate? Well, I'm not a policy expert, but technology moves quickly, and I haven't seen a lot of the changes in the privacy laws. Keelty says, all right, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but that's fine. He says, so it might be a presumption on my part, but prospective juror tails off. Defense stands up, says, all right, sir, our turn. How are you doing? Thank you very much for coming in and being patient. My name's Sean. I represent the defendant. Can you tell me more about your day-to-day responsibilities? He says, yeah, I'm a chief customer officer. We want to be friendlier to citizens. It should be painless. I was also a senior advisor. We're helping people do all sorts of stuff. All right. Says, well, if I have some complaints to register down the line about the taxes, I'll talk to you. I would like to clarify, don't work for the IRS. Berkowitz says, no problem. We're going to shift gears anyways. He says you had, perhaps not criticism, but some suggestions for reform that could be done in criminal justice. Anything worth sharing or that might color your ability to be fair? Says, nope, I don't think so. I thought about it, and the reason I wrote it, and this guy just goes off, right? He's talking about, so, whether in some way it's drug enforcement that happened or anything like that, there's room for improvement. In 250 years as a country of laws, they don't tend to keep up with society. So he's just sort of going on a rant. And I expect there would not be any testimony about drugs in this case, but would that impact your ability to be fair? And he knows some couple people from the main list. Different James Baker, same thing. Not the same DOJ Inspector General. Robbie Mook knows that he worked for the Clinton campaign, but not that he worked for him personally. So he's qualified. They bring in 399 next. Hello, welcome into the courtroom. This person works for a nonprofit, wrote grants for individuals. Any initial impressions about serving on the jury? No, not about the case. My greatest concern is I have physical therapy, which is starting up. Would it affect your ability to be a juror? Are you taking any medication for your pinched nerve? Any medication? Yeah, prednisone. That doesn't help? Well, it's helping. I can walk. But you would have difficulty concentrating. She says, yeah, I apologize for your discomfort. Defense says, I understand you hold lawyers to a high regard. Mr. Sussman is an attorney. You wouldn't hold him to a higher standard than anybody else, would you? Says, no, I don't hold individuals higher than other people. Now, court does end up striking this juror, 399, because they have a pinched nerve. And the pinched nerve is going to make it difficult for them to sit through a long trial. So they're going to get booted. 1085 comes in. This person is an accountant, been doing that since 2011. Looks like sister is a defense lawyer. Shout out to juror number 1085 sister. Shout out. Do you talk to her about the criminal justice system? No, not about her cases. Well, in conversation, I think she's mentioned it. That there are two sides here. Your defense attorney sister, is she going to prejudice you? No. Counsel, any questions? Prosecutor says, your defense lawyer sister says that the justice system needs work. Can you address that for a little bit? And she goes into the rant there, but none of that would prejudice this juror. Do my views, prospective juror, say it again, say it again. Do my views, are they because of the differences between street crime or white collar crime? The court asks the question again, says, Does the critique of the system that you just provided for us apply to all types of crime, or were you specifically talking about criminal justice? I think that these two types of crime that you mentioned are treated differently, and I do think that, yes, statistically, so they go off into this criminal justice system conversation about his opinions on the justice system, but that doesn't really help us with much of anything. This is a ma'am. You can step down. Willing to judge the case on its own. Yes. So let's see. Another juror comes in. There's a relationship between Darcy Cahill Baker, which may be somebody close to James Baker. Your firm does tax work for Mr. Baker and his wife. Oh, so there is a connection. I do contact work for Jim and his wife. I prepared his tax returns for a long time. Have you ever met him? I don't know that he's come into the office. If it was really quick. Have you spoken to him? Exchanged emails? Yeah. Personally? No. Counsel, any follow-up? Despite this relationship, if Mr. Baker comes in and testifies, would you be able to be fair and impartial? Yes. Berkowitz comes up again, spending a lot of time with this juror. Can you tell the truth? Yes. Not going to be difficult to judge people's credibility. And let's fast forward through this one. Here we have it. The defense now, Berkowitz, saying, reluctantly, Judge, until the last interaction about her conversation with Jim, we're going to have to strike. Baker's credibility is going to be among the key issues in this trial. It's not as if she works at an office where somebody else has worked on this thing. She does his tax returns. She interacts with him personally. I respectfully think it's going to be difficult for not to bring that into the conversation. There are good grounds for a cause to strike this juror. Court says she was pretty adamant and steadfast. She could disregard that and evaluate his testimony fairly, so I'm going to overrule your objection, but feel free to use a strike on it if you want. They're not going to do that. 593 comes in. Good morning. Thank you for your patience. We've reviewed your questionnaire. What do you do? I work at the Center for Leadership and Global Sustainability. Okay. And you don't have to be physically present. No, I'm working remotely right now. First impressions, I had a negative opinion of lawyers. Don't remember exactly what I said. I'm not sure exactly where that came up, but I did say that. Without being colored by what you think of defense lawyers or prosecutors generally, can you be fair in this case? Yes, I can. Counsel. Keelty stands up. On your questionnaire you filled out, you mentioned that you went to the same college as Hillary, which is Wellesley, and you had met her before. Can you elaborate? Have you just met her in passing, or do you have a relationship with Mrs. Hillary Clinton? She says it was just in passing. Okay. And during the course of this trial, Clinton's name's going to come up. Is there anything or any feelings you have about her that would make you unfair? No, I could be fair. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I mean, could you be fair? I mean, the facts that I've gone to the same school as her, the same events, I've met her before, I think I would be kind of more towards her side on some things. So the juror is saying, yeah, I would be leaning towards Hillary. Went to the same school as her, went to the same events, feel like kind of a kinship with Hillary. So Keelty says, you mentioned that you have some concerns about law enforcement. In this trial, there's going to be a lot of FBI witnesses and many others. And it might involve the Clinton campaign. Could you still be fair and impartial? She says, I don't think I would. Berkowitz now comes back out. So let me just pause on this for a minute. Would you have any problem evaluating their testimony and the evidence they present fairly? I don't think so. No problems. You would not be able to evaluate the evidence that might involve in an impartial manner. I don't think I would, right? I don't think I would be able to evaluate it in an impartial manner. So Berkowitz comes out. How are you doing? My name's Berkowitz. Let me rehabilitate you. Let's see if the prosecutor just allows it again. The case, as Judge Cooper indicated last week, is a big ceremonial courtroom, involves FBI and Clinton. She's not on trial. Sussman's on trial. Could you follow the instructions based on what you hear? She says yes, just like the prior guy. The fact that you may not like somebody for president, everybody has a chance to run and say their piece. Can you be impartial? It wouldn't affect your ability to evaluate Sussman fairly, would it? No, it doesn't. Now you understand, you said some things about lawyers, which I certainly understand. I want to make sure that you know Sussman's a lawyer and you don't hold it against him. Nope, won't do that either. Any objections? So Keelty this time is now going to step in and make the objection, which is the same thing he should have done earlier when Zulu was giving me a hard time about it. And rightfully so. I appreciated that. Says, Your Honor, the government would move to strike this juror for cause. The heart of this case is whether Mr. Sussman was representing the Clinton campaign when he walked into the FBI. She just said she couldn't be impartial with evidence that she relates to Clinton. Then she contradicted herself and said she could when Mr. Berkowitz asked. Court says, 1 second, let me get the transcript. He's reading it. Long pause. So, all right, let's call her back. So they did. Miss Jenkins, call back 593. She comes back in there. Ma'am, I just have one follow-up question. Yes, ma'am. When you were questioned by Keelty, you said that you had gone to the same school with Hillary and that you might favor her on some things, and then you responded to Berkowitz that you thought you could be fair to Clinton and that on the campaign issues that might come up on trial. I just want to make it clear that we explore a little bit about that. And Berkowitz, the defense, said to you, the Clinton campaign is not on trial, Hillary's not on trial, Trump's not on trial. But this charge involves the allegation that Sussman was lying to the FBI about the Clinton campaign. And so given that, do you think that, and I'd like an honest answer from you, ma'am, that you would be able to evaluate the evidence on the question fairly and impartially, despite the fact that you and she went to the same school? Prospective juror says, I'm not sure if I could. Honest, I'm not sure if I could. Thank you, madam. Court says, okay, thank you. Juror, okay. All right, the court will sustain the government's objection to 593. That same objection, in my opinion, should have been made on this juror also, whatever we marked him down at. I think it was the phone banker. The Hillary phone banker was somebody probably should have got that objection, but didn't because of whatever reason. All right, so, and Lauren, with respect to 105, the court will sustain the defense's challenge to her. While I don't think she formed any opinion of Mr. Baker personally or professionally, I think a concern that Berkowitz did not mention is the financial interest, the fact that she's a contractor. So they're sort of booting some people and then they're qualifying people and they're booting them after the fact. She expressed some hesitation about this and others. I think that the possibility that she might be influenced by a client and the loss of that business is grounds for cause, so we'll strike 1085. Your Honor, calling juror number 290 now. We've got another one coming in. Sir, how are you? I'm good. Thanks for your patience. You can take your mask off. What do? You're a medical illustrator, huh? How long you been doing that? 16 years. And says your partner is somebody at a big law firm? Yep. Are they a lawyer? No, they work in HR. There may be some testimony about law firm billing records. Is this going to bias you? No, Your Honor, not going to be a big deal. When I describe the case for you, are you familiar with anybody? Well, I think I know James Baker. I've heard that name before. Was he in the Reagan or the Bush administrations? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Defense stands up. All right, sir, I've got a couple questions for you. You heard about this stuff in the news, right? You obviously heard questions. You didn't see anything that raised concerns. Is there anything that you're aware of that could prevent you from being fair and impartial? No, not that I'm aware of. And you'd be willing to do that, to follow these instructions, right? Yep, that's it. Any challenge? Nope. And so 290 is also on. We're now into the afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. You can take your mask off. Who are you? I'm a security guard. I work out in Northwest Washington. At a store or restaurant? Office building. It says your wife's a community supervisor for the federal government. What part of that does she do? She's a parole officer for the DOJ. So might be inclined towards a prosecution. So for the DC government, yeah, basically everybody here works for DC. Says, got it. That's a hard job. It's for the federal government job. So she's a probation officer? Yes, sir. And is she a probation officer in this court? Well, I'm not sure. She works for this organization and says, well, they're a service to this court, but she's not a federal probation officer. Okay. But it can be confusing. Any thoughts when you first heard about this case? Well, the first thing that came to my mind was I might be taken off of work to be a juror. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Any problem with that? No, I don't have any problems with that. I'd love to have the work off. And says, all right, well, going to turn this over to the attorneys. Prosecution has no questions. The defense does. It says, this case involves allegations that Sussman lied to the FBI. You're a security person. Do you have any problems with that? Says, no, I can be fair. Not a big deal. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Remember when we were going through the jury questionnaire, there was a whole category of conversations about Sussman. Hang on, I'm reading this right now. Quasi-law enforcement, it would be the place of the testimony of FBI agents. Yeah, so we went through a whole section in the jury questionnaire where we got details about whether people were involved in security or not. And so I'm not going to get into that again, but prospective juror continues. He says, I'll give them the same level of evaluation. Just because I'm a police officer doesn't mean that I'm going to be biased. And they spent some time on this, but no challenges. So 329 is also qualified. Another juror comes back in. This one may have a problem with doctor's appointments. A couple follow-up questions. You and your husband are partners at a big law firm. I'm not a partner. I'm a risk and compliance attorney. You're going to hear things about billing. Would your experience prejudice you? Says no. Many people are going to be talking about their legal expertise. Any prejudice? No, sir, I don't think so. Have you ever come across Perkins Coie in practice? You're at big law. They're big law. Do you know them? No, sir, I don't think so. And your husband's a lawyer, right? Yep, at another firm. Any connections from him and Perkins Coie? I don't think so. I don't believe so. You know that you're a lawyer, that we swear oaths and obligations. We have ethical legal obligations. And that Sussman is on trial for lying. That's the point I was trying to make previously. These crimes of moral turpitude. Attorneys, sort of have to swear that we'll be honest and act with integrity. And we've got certain duties and obligations that if we violate, we lose our license. We don't get to practice law anymore. And attorneys know that. So if you're an attorney and you go to the FBI and you breach those ethical duties, you sort of have an extra duty. You know, you sort of did something wrong, but you should know better because you are somebody who takes that extra oath and you've got these extra degrees and things and you swear to like really uphold these standards. And so they're saying, juror, you are a juror on this who is a lawyer. You know those standards and you know that Michael Sussman knows those standards, but those standards are not on trial here today. So can you set those aside so that we can focus on what is actually going on? She says, yeah, I believe so. And have you heard of this case before? Says, yeah, I believe I have. I think Sussman sounds familiar. I mean, Durham sounds familiar. I feel like I've read about this case. I don't remember the details, but I will remember as, you know, if I were to hear more. But nothing specific? Nope, nothing specific. Over to counsel. Saying here, you do cybersecurity research. Yes, I mean, I'm not a technology lawyer, but I've done research. I know the ISO standards, and I know cybersecurity requirements for law firm on the compliance side. All right, you're going to hear testimony about DNS data and that stuff, but you can still be fair? Yes. And you mentioned that in 2016, you donated money to one or more candidates. Is that true? Says, yeah. So actually, I think I started to write that. I believe it was actually the 2020 election. I can't remember if I donated in 2016. Wonder where that money went. I did support one candidate over the other, but I don't recall if I made an actual donation. But I know I did in 2020. And I think you said you likely donated to Hillary. Is that right? She said, yeah, had I donated to a candidate, that's how I would have done it. And did you have any incredibly strong feelings about any candidates back in 2016? Because their names are going to come out. She said, well, I certainly had a strong preference for one campaign over the other and one candidate over the other. And I hope and I believe I could put that aside to listen to the evidence. Understood. Hope and believe is different than being 100% certain, though, madam. So can you be 100% certain? She says, yes, I believe I could. Yes, I believe I could. Okay. I certainly would I have every intention of doing so. I believe I could. Yes. So for a lawyer, she's really hedging on that many, many times, right? He's saying hope and believe is different than being 100% certain. So can you be 100% certain, madam lawyer? She says, yes, I believe I could. I believe I could. I have every intention of doing so. I believe I could. But she didn't say yes. I believe I could, yes. So you sort of get that secondary yes there. So we'll see, do we get an objection on that? Berkowitz comes and tries to rehabilitate her. Says, I'm told we're going to get a break for lunch soon, so that's a positive. I'm not going to try to prolong that. I represent Sussman. You said you had a friend who worked at Latham and Watkins, which I think is where Berkowitz works. Yeah, Berkowitz and Bosworth are two of the defense attorneys who are from Latham and Watkins. Is there anything about your relationship to your friend at our law firm that's going to prejudice this case? No. I've worked in enough law firms to understand how this works. She says, I can't remember the details. I believe Latham, she may have worked with them in one way or another. Prospective juror says, I primarily do research. And court reporter Lisa says, ma'am, will you slow down over here? I am trying to document this, and you're talking like Ben Shapiro. Hit the brakes. Prospective juror says, oh, of course, sorry. I primarily do research for general counsel. People are located in different places. We have a general counsel's office. So they're just talking about the work that they do. And we're not going to get into the weeds on that. Court says that they'll get out at a certain time. Prospective juror says, I have another question. Do you know tomorrow morning I need to drop her off so she's got some kid problems? Mentions those two things. Berkowitz says, Judge, there was one. I'm sorry. You did note on your questionnaire that you had to travel from the 27th to the 30th. Any problems with that? Family's going out of town. Looks like your daughter's winning an award. Congratulations on the 24th. That's coming up. Shout out to juror's daughter. If I were in court, it would not something that you could be excused for. Would that be okay? No, I certainly would not be resentful. I understand this takes precedence over a high school award. Whoa, lady, that's your kid. Well, I think it's pretty important, to show up. I don't have kids, but, high school award versus a jury trial. All right. Well, so they talk about it. No objections to her. She gets qualified. Thank you for your patience. You're a client. You're at this, they bring in another juror, and we're getting close to the end on this one. Somebody here grew up in DC. This person is now 25 years old. You like to play video games, sir? So this guy, he writes on his form, what do you like to do for fun? He likes to play video games. What's your favorite game? Favorite one is probably Elden Ring, which I haven't played yet. You know what I've been playing a lot of lately is that Dark Side Genesis. Is that the one? Dark Side Genesis? I think I've been playing that on Stadia. But I've been hearing a lot about this Elden Ring, and I don't think I purchased that one yet. But judge says, I'm sorry, one more time. What the heck are you saying to me, son? He says, Elden Ring, Judge. Court says, okay. The lawyers may know what that one is. I don't know. Says, you haven't heard about this case until last week, have you? Yeah, that's right. When I described it to you, anything come to your mind? Not really. Elden Ring. I was trying to level up my character. That's it. I'd like to be leveling up my character right now, Judge, but you keep asking me questions. Court says, nothing really? Is that what you said to me? This judge is funny. Nothing really. Okay. Yes. Okay. Counsel, over to you. Thank you, Your Honor. The court says, do you have any problems with being a juror in this case? No, it's my first time doing this. Defense stands up. Hey, my name's Sean. I'm representing the defense. Sounds like this is potentially your first time serving on jury duty. It sounds like. You understand that you're going to ask to follow the judge's instructions and you can't listen to anything outside the courtroom. You understand this? Yes. And do you think that you could serve as fair and impartial and give both sides a fair shake? Yes, I could. All right. Thank you very much. Step down. Any objections? No. We get two more and then we're done. Let's see. Another juror is brought in. Where do you work? It's a temporary agency. They do survey research on foundations. Okay, you were at some place called ICF before that. Yeah, for 10 years. It's a consulting firm. So you were on the technical side. I just uploaded things online. I have not heard about this case. Any problem serving on the jury? I can be fair and impartial. Questions from the prosecutor says that you did some phone banking for a candidate in 2016. Do you hold... So neither candidate is on trial here. Do you hold strong opinions that would not allow you to be fair and impartial? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want you to know the question is, would those opinions impact your ability to be fair? Yes, I could be fair. Do you think you can, or are you sure? I will. 100% certain you can. Yes, I will. Defense takes the stand, says the same thing. I notice that you might have some hardship if you're here. Yeah, I can serve. I just don't get paid if I don't work. Oh, I understand that. That's not something most people like to do, to not get paid for what they're doing. Let me ask you this, he says. You think that it would cause you to resent any of the parties if you're here? In other words, would you be angry at Michael Sussman because you're here having to listen to his case? And would you hold that against him? No, it wouldn't cause me to resent him. I could be fair. I appreciate everything. Juror number 9 is qualified. Time flies, they say. Last juror comes in. Who are you, sir? Well, I'm a mechanic. How long have you been doing that? About 32 years. So sitting on this jury would be a little bit different than your day job, huh, sir? Yeah, exactly. And how do you feel about that? Well, sitting here is no problem. Just another day of work, I'd consider it. Sir, you grew up in D.C.? Yep. Lived here all your life? Yep. Never been on a jury before? I don't know. How could you be a D.C. citizen all your life and not serve on a jury? I don't know. It just never happened. All right. And you've never heard of this case before, right? Nope. And when I last described this case, anything come to your mind? No. And you don't have any problems being on this jury? Nope. Berkowitz comes back up. Now watch Berkowitz. He does this every single time, right? He says, I represent Michael Sussman in this matter. And every time he gets up there, he's saying the client's name, right? It's his name. He's a human. He's probably looking at him. I represent Michael Sussman. And Sussman's sitting there probably just kind of, looking at the prospective jurors like a little puppy, like, I'm a good person, right? Look at me. And Sussman and his defense team, every time he gets up, right, he sort of says like some fun stuff like this. Like, this is not necessary. I'm told we get to go to lunch after this, so I won't take up too much of anybody's time. He's got an audience of one. He's only speaking to those jurors. He's trying to convince those jurors. He's a nice guy. Michael Sussman's a nice guy. I know you're hungry. I care about your physical needs. I'm really sorry I have to do this, but just a couple quick questions. Compare and contrast that with the prosecutors, who basically never say any of that. Just a lot less polished, like, what's your name, sir? Where are you from? All right, next juror. Whereas the defense is really spending a lot of time on this, right? We get a whole introductory paragraph on basically every one of these. And you indicated, sir, Judge Cooper said you've been here a long time and you haven't served on a jury. Ever been called down for something like this? Yeah, I was called down here once before. Can you think of anything that would make you unfair? Nope. All right, sir, you can step down. Right, so basically very little actual questioning coming out of this. You can step down. 1016 is qualified. Miss Jenkins, how long do you need for lunch? 1 hour, sir. By my clock, that's 12:36. Let's try to get back by 1:35. All right. We'll stand in recess. And major shout outs to Lisa A. Moreira, who is the official court reporter. I apologize if I'm botching that last name, but that was the morning session, my friends. Let's see if we have any. Let's bring that chat up there. Let's see if we have any potential. I do not have the afternoon transcripts. So we're going to have to do a quick refresh on the court docket, see if the court docket has anything interesting for us. And we'll see what we've got here as this pulls up. All right. Well, I saw a couple chats come in. While that's loading up, we have Starling Lee with a very nice super chat. Thank you, Starling. Says, thanks for being one of the law tubers to cover this. You're a beautiful person, Rob. Now to find my husband to dispose of the gift my cat just dropped at my feet. I'll call it Hillary before it gets dropped into the trash. Yeah, you got a little, your cat brought you a Clinton, huh? Well, don't you hate when that happens? Well, thank you, Starling Lee. Yeah, so there's a lot to cover. We've got a lot more to get through as this trial unfolds, and I appreciate that support, Starling Lee. Another one from Bootsy with a nice super chat. Thanks for that little transcript love there. I appreciate it. George is here with another super chat. Says, thanks for taking the time to do this work, giving us visibility into what is going on in DC. Yeah, and I'm trying to pull up the court docket so that we can see if there was any recent filings. Right, they're done with trial, obviously, but the transcripts are just not quite ready yet because they are probably busy finalizing them right now. But let's say if trial ended at 5 Eastern time, then that would mean they were done about 2. So they've been done for about 2 hours here on my time. Let's take a look at the court docket. All right. So here now, this is over from the federal court. This was updated this afternoon. Minute entry for the jury trial held. Voir dire commenced. Jury trial commenced at 9 a.m. Defendant still remains on personal recognizance. Court ordered, the court having impaneled the jury in this action, it's ordered that during trial, all meals are paid for. So looks like we got a full jury. And you can see sort of what the makeup looks like. We have a couple people that we just detailed here. We've got some phone bankers, IT professional, Hillary for America donor, DNC donor, and others. So I will get a copy of the other transcripts. And we'll see how much is left in there to go through. But they got pretty far through jury selection. And if we take a look at the remainder of the court docket, there's just nothing really else there to cover. All right, so let me take a look at the chat, and I want to see if there's any additional comments over on locals. I dropped an actual copy of the full transcript, so if you are over on locals, I made it a free post, but you still may need to join if you want to actually download it. I'm not sure. But I did post that. I want to see if there's any comments over on the locals forum. Otherwise, we may be wrapping it up here shortly. Yeah, a couple comments here. Three Girlies was in the house. Let me pull this up over here. So Three Girlies saying more Sussman info. Former New York Times reporter asked the court to limit testimony. And we covered a little bit of that. That was the stuff from Lichtblau. Yeah, Eric Lichtblau was the actual former New York Times attorney, wants a protective order, does not want to be asked certain questions, wants to say that he's going to continue to protect his journalistic privilege. Grouchy old cat lady, grouchy old cat ladies here says, this is interesting, thanks. Three Girlies says, man, kudos to the mom who was okay missing the teenagers award. Maybe that's, to show a good example for her kid. Consider this case would be open in other areas. Detox should be administered. Sequestration. Kincaid says, I wish there was a way the location could be changed. Hello, good sir. I want the chat open too. Half the fun is chatting with our community. I'll open it up. Grouchy, I apologize for that. I was trying to share the PDF, and I don't think I can share the PDF if it's in a chat format. And then we had another one from Kenny Cole in my... Here, there we go. Kenny Cole says, I heard some of the claims the FBI wants to protect the FBI by blaming Clinton lawyers for something they were well aware of. Durham wanted a plea because he didn't want to be forced to prove the FBI was complicit. Here, Mueller got similar treatment when he was connected to Whitey Bulger. And those are some comments over on YouTube. But I think, my friends, that's probably going to be it for us. I'm not sure that it's really worthwhile to cover the second half of the day. If it's only the remainder of the jury, what I'll do is I'll get the transcript, I'll post it, and then I will probably quickly go through it tomorrow when we start up with the trial. I really want to see opening arguments and start calling witnesses and start assembling the mind map and start piecing this whole thing together. But we got to get a jury picked first, and of course that was today. It sounds like they got the full thing impaneled, which is just great news. So that means we can start with some more substantive oral arguments tomorrow. And let me just check in with the YouTube chat. Hey, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Another one came in from Diamond Gun, says, where we go one, we go all. I see that. Thank you for that. All right. Well, I think that we'll just leave it there. I know it's kind of heavy lifting to go through some of this stuff, but, let me know if you find it useful. I'm interested in the Sussman case, certainly, but if it's too much to listen to me sit here and read through, full documents like this, certainly can approach it a different way. I can synthesize it a little bit more freely, but I just wanted to do it quickly because it hit my inbox. I know that all this stuff is sort of not being covered out there. So regardless of what we do here, I want to make sure that you do get the transcripts quickly. And so I'll be posting those as soon as I get them. But I'm seeing here, yeah, other people saying this is good stuff. Okay, keep up the great work. Cool. So we'll keep plugging along. We'll keep assembling it. Remember that I did link the mind map up there. I would certainly appreciate it if you shared this video with other people. Just let them know what we're doing here. A lot of the stuff that I post on YouTube just doesn't show up in the search results. So like if somebody is searching for Sussman, Durham, it's very unlikely that they're going to find what we're doing here. You know, they're just not going to find it. So it would be very useful if you shared it with people, said, hey, we're covering Sussman. We'll probably tomorrow be going live right around the same time, about 2:45 or 3 o'clock. I have to wait until I get the transcripts in from the court, but tomorrow should be a lot more fun. We'll have opening arguments from both sides. We'll start probably to call our first witness. We'll be able to hear from multiple different people, not just the judge and the lawyers, and it'll be a lot more fun to assemble the mind map. So we'll be back here tomorrow to do it all again. I would love it if you gave us a like before you got out of here. I really appreciate your time here with us today. Those of you who are supporting the channel with your super chats, with your love over on Locals, if you're a YouTube member, all of that revenue, all of that money is going to pay for these transcripts. And so that's where it's going. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot. That's it for me. Hope you enjoyed the show with some of the content. Have a tremendous evening with your friends and family. I look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow on the next one. Bye-bye.